Oh, the roar of the chains and the crashing of timbers, the noise at the end of the world in your ears, as a mountain of steel makes its way to the sea, and the last ship.
Hi.
Lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for making
lovely colour.
time for us. Thank you. Well, it was a good thing because it's all black and white in here, so.
Sting, ever the showman, is creating a new stage.
And across that sea is an island, a paradise we are told.
Not rock and roll, but a Broadway musical.
Forgotten.
Inspired by the place he couldn't wait to leave as a boy.
They call it the island of soul.
One of my earliest memories is being big enough to walk out of the front door myself and then look down and see the ship that really blotted out the sun. They were 4 or 5 times as high as the house. So I was brought up in this kind of surreal industrial environment, which I didn't want to stay there. I didn't want to end up in the shipyard. There's nothing much else. There was a coal mine at one end and the shipyard in the other. So I figured out very early I've got to escape this.
He did, of course. The former school teacher became Sting, fronted the Police, then went solo, won multiple Grammys, sold 100 million albums, and now at 62,
With one roof above our heads.
he's going back to Wallsend, England, turning his first new songs in nearly a decade into The Last Ship, a musical.
You wouldn't have to.
I was born in the shadow of the shipyard. Tell that story. The shipyard closed. What was it like for those men and those families to go through that traumatic change in their lives? And we ended up with this thing called The Last Ship, and we're almost ready to launch the thing. So it's kind of scary.
So you're fabulously successful, you're wealthy, you are 62, you don't have to do this. Why are you risking a musical? Why go out there and put yourself out there?
I would disagree with you that I don't have to do this. Of course I have to do it, but I'm really fully alive when I'm engaged in a creative problem.
But it's a new creative problem. I mean, you are, like you say, you're walking a bit of a plank with The Last Ship.
Yeah, it's a pretty dangerous landscape. There are bleached corpses everywhere. Yeah. Of previous attempts, but that shouldn't daunt you. I think it's probably the most difficult thing I've ever tackled.
If I loved you.
I always loved the musical theatre. I was educated by my mother's records, listening to Carousel and West Side Story and My Fair Lady. And I ate those songs for breakfast.
Someone described you once as kind of a show tune queen.
If you scratch me, I will start to sing Carousel. It's a strange thing for a rock and roller to admit, but I learned a great deal about harmony from those records, from those songs.
Sting, it came after a bit of a drought.
Yes.
I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
8 to 10 years. Did you worry that your gift was gone?
I suppose, yes, I did worry, but I began to figure out why. It's because I was getting Sting, the ego, was getting in the way. And what I'm best at doing is speaking for other people than myself. So using my voice to tell other people's stories.
And yet, before the sun has set.
It's interesting, I find, that you went back to Wallsend to get your creative juices going again, a community that you couldn't wait to get out of.
Yeah, it's ironic, and I'm the first to admit that. But I think a lot of people spend a lot of energy escaping where they come from, and then at a certain point in their life, they're drawn back, like a homing signal. Brings you back to where you were.
Perhaps a door slammed in my face.
My dreams in my creative life, I dream about these streets. I dream in the house that I used to belong in. Trying to sort out who I am.
Have you?
Not quite. I'm on the way.
You see these work boots in my hands, they'll probably fit you now, my son. Take them, they're a gift from me. Why don't you try them on?
Sting taps into the age-old conflict between fathers and sons. In Dead Man's Boots, a shipyard worker urges his boy to walk in his steps fruitlessly.
Get this through your head. I'm nothing like you. I'm done with all the arguing.
What about Dead Man's Boots? There's tremendous emotion, Sting, in that song that builds and builds till the end, where you're saying, not in my life, I'm not going.
There's a lot of anger and a lot of remorse in that song, which is biographical. My dad didn't really understand what I wanted to do, and my father wanted me to have a technical education. He wanted me to go into engineering like he did, or something, something practical and useful. I had these vague ideas about art and music, and his love for me was that. He said, "You're crazy. What you want to do this makes no sense. You can't make a living singing songs."
He didn't get what you did in the beginning. Did he ever?
I think towards the end, begrudgingly, yes. We had the same hands, exactly the same hands, and I'd never noticed that before, and he was dying. And I said that to him, and he said, "Well, you used your hands better than I did." And he'd never really paid me a compliment before, so it was kind of, the timing was pretty devastating.
Or slow as the pace that build the keel, 19,000 tons of steel.
The shipyards he sings of on the River Tyne, immortalized in the film The Launch, began to collapse in the 1980s. Swan Hunter had churned out thousands of ships in its long history for many countries. We were curious, was there a Canadian vessel still afloat, built in Sting's backyard? We found it in Halifax, the last ship, still under Canadian flag, moored in Halifax Harbour. The CSS Acadia, now a museum ship. She doesn't steam anywhere anymore, but she is a maritime legend, part of the story Sting is staging.
Over 2,000 ships were built at that yard. In that whole period, Acadia was number 912.
Steve Reed is its shipkeeper.
Headline, she's 100 years old
100?
This year. So she was launched on May 8th in 1913, Newcastle on Tyne, the Swan Hunter William Richardson shipyard.
Now, is this the original bell?
This would be the original ship's bell from 1913, that's correct. And it is just about time to signal it. It's half past the hour. That would be 7 bells.
Swan Hunter was huge. They were the General Motors of shipbuilding in 1913.
Dan Conlon is the curator at Halifax's Maritime Museum.
So when Canada wanted a state-of-the-art research ship to sort of claim the North, they turned to the biggest shipyard in the world, and we designed it, but the Geordies built it for us.
The Geordies built it.
The Acadia was commissioned as a research ship to chart the oceans on the East Coast and the Arctic.
As a research ship, she was really kind of a national showpiece, so she had, a carved figurehead and beautiful cabins below that looked like first-class cabins aboard Titanic.
Conlon made a pilgrimage to the English shipyard, but he was too late.
So I arrived at the Swan Hunter shipyard just in time to see it empty, derelict, and being taken apart.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And I think Acadia was built by these two slips, based on what I can see from period maps. And now it's just bushes and rubble.
I've listened to 4 pieces from there. The title track.
The last ship?
Yeah. Another one called Dead Man's Boots.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's also, wow, I can hear the whole early conflict between my father and myself in that one.
You obviously feel quite passionate about this ship. Wouldn't it be great if Sting came to this ship?
I would certainly be happy and honored to host him down in the hydrographer's wardroom, where when I lived on board, every Friday night was basically an open invitation to close friends of mine to bring their guitars down, sit around the mess table, and maybe jam out a song or two.
I'll tell him.
Please do.
I wanted to show you this picture of the Acadia, which is a Canadian ship moored in Halifax now. It's 100 years old this year. It was built in Swan Hunter in 1913.
Wow.
He asked me to ask you whether
Okay.
you'd come to Halifax and do something about the last ship. In
I would
Halifax.
love to. I have very fond memories of Halifax, Nova Scotia. They saved my wife's life there.
Tell me.
We were on a plane back to London, and she started a hemorrhage. And we had to land the 747 in Halifax, which is kind of dangerous. We were whisked off to the local hospital, and they saved her. They gave her a ridiculous number of pints of. She lost so much blood; she was almost dead. So I owe it to the people of Halifax to come back.
Well, they would love to see you on the Acadia.
They'll launch in a boat on the morrow at noon.
Why do you think that this theme, The Last Ship, will carry over into other communities?
I think it's a universal theme of the need to work, the importance of building something with your hands that you can see and touch, and say that this is what we made. You know, nowadays we sit at computers and we make ephemeral things. So the whole of Western society is going through this trauma at the moment. You know, and men particularly don't know who they are. We don't know how to grapple with life. You know, we're a bit lost.
What do you got? What do we got?
Sting's rousing musical opens in Chicago next summer and then jumps to Broadway.
What do you got? What do we got? We got no.
Will The Last Ship star Sting?
No, there isn't really a part for me.
Shame.
No, I don't want to be in it. I really want to hand this over to actors. So I'm looking forward to just being a producer and sitting back and, seeing how it works. I just want to get it on. I want to get it on.
And the last ship.
Susan Ormiston, CBC News, New York.